we are going to be in the book of Joshua. And we're going to start by reading the first chapter of Joshua, verses 1 through 9. And this is going to be familiar to you because we're going to talk a little bit about Jericho. But before we get to Jericho, we are going to talk about what's going on in the land with the Israelites. So, hear the word of the Lord. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, the son of Nun, who was Moses' assistant, "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now, therefore, arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I am giving to them, to the people of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given to you, just as I promised to Moses. From the wilderness in this Lebanon as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites to the great sea toward the going down of the sun shall be your territory. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." Thanks be to God for the reading, the hearing, and the understanding of his holy word. So here is Moses, who has just died, and Moses has led the Israelites out of Egypt, and they've been wandering around the desert for how long? 40 years, because they just couldn't get things right. Their attitudes were, in the trenches, and they needed some time to get their heart in the right place. So Moses dies, and Joshua was his assistant, and the Lord places Joshua now in charge over the Israelites. And it is time to leave the desert and move on to the promised land. Okay? And he has given him the assurance that God will never leave you, to Joshua. I'll never leave you. I'll always be with you, just as I was with Moses, I will be with you. And he's giving him a couple of things to make sure that he does to ensure that he will be successful. And one of them is to make sure that he continues with the law, that he meditates on it day and night. So he is staying close to the word of the Lord, and that relationship, therefore, is going to stay strong, and he will be successful in whatever he does. Then we move on to chapter 6 of Joshua, and we find out that there is a big obstacle between them, the Israelite people, and the land that God has promised them. And it is the city of Jericho. And this city is a monster. It is a fortress. It is built to withstand attacks of all kinds. So, like the Israelites are thinking to themselves, well, they're probably not thinking to themselves because they were a whiny group and they would complain a lot. So they probably are complaining among themselves when they begin their journey and they see this big city of Jericho. How are they going to conquer Jericho to get to the land beyond it that God has promised? So we are going to read Joshua 6, 1 through 25. So hear the word of the Lord. Now Jericho was shut up inside and outside because of the people of Israel. Now remember, how many Israelites did Moses lead out of Egypt? A bunch. I'm not looking for a number. I'm looking for a bunch. There were thousands of Israelites. So the presence of just that number of people is going to be a little intimidating, all right? So Jericho's all shut up inside and outside because of the people of Israel. They see him out there, and they have closed the doors. Nobody's going in and nobody's coming out. None went out and none came in. And the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have given Jericho into your hand with its king and mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all the men of war going around the city once. Thus shall you do for 6 days." Hold up your fingers. 6 days. 6 days. They're going to do this for 6 days. 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. So evidently there were different types of trumpets available at that time that you could blow horns. These particular horns were ram's horns that were being blown, and they were positioned in front of the ark. So 7 priests with the horns before the ark. On the seventh day, you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets. And when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, when you hear the sound of the trumpet, then all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people shall go up, every one straight before him. So Joshua, the son of Nun, called the priests and said to them, "Take up the ark of the covenant, and let 7 priests bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord." And he said to the people, "Go forward, march around the city, and let the armed men pass on before the ark of the covenant." So he's got the people lined up in a special order in the ark of the covenant. And just as Joshua had commanded the people, the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the Lord went forward blowing the trumpets with the ark of the covenant of the Lord following them. Okay, so the priests go first with the horns, and the Ark of the Covenant is right behind them. The armed men were walking before the priests, so they were in front of the priests blowing the trumpets, and the rear guard was walking after the ark while the trumpets blew continually. But Joshua commanded the people, "You shall not shout or make your voice heard, neither shall any word go out of your mouth until the day I tell you to shout. Then you shall shout." So he caused the ark of the Lord to circle the city, going about it once. And they came into the camp and spent the night in the camp. Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord. And the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horn before the ark of the Lord walked on, and they blew the trumpets continually. So you see, this is a repetition. Day 1's behind them, and they're starting on day 2. And the armed men were walking before them, and the rear guard was walking after the Ark of the Covenant while the trumpets blew continually. And the second day they marched around the city once and returned into the camp. And they did this for 6 days. Okay? Now imagine what the men of valor in Jericho are seeing. So they're seeing this large magnitude of people, but on that first day, now they're getting a little more organized, and they've got these horns blowing, they're carrying something, and they're walking around the entire city. Okay? So let me tell you a little bit about Jericho so you can kind of get it in your mind just what they were dealing with. So Jericho sat at a crossroads of 2 major roads into Palestine. You couldn't enter Palestine without confronting this fortress. And then secondly, it sat kind of high up, 400 feet up on a bluff above the river. So if you wanted to attack the city, you would have to climb up this bluff. And the way that the city was constructed, the Jericho army had the advantage because it was structured so that there were big towers every so often that the army could stand up there and they could look down and they could shoot their arrows on any enemy who would be trying to climb up and to attack them. And these towers also had those big ramparts. You know how they pulled back this, I don't know what it was called, but it was a contraption that had a big boulder on it, and then they would pull it and it would fling and it would kill bunches of people. So this structure had 2 massive walls, not just one wall, but 2 massive walls. The outside wall was 6 feet thick. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the wall is from the pulpit to here. That's how thick it was, okay? And then it was 20 feet high, all right? Then you go 50 yards in, and then there was another wall. And guess how thick this wall was? It was 12 feet thick. It was double the first. And guess how tall it was? 30 feet. 30 feet high. So it was truly built as a fortress, almost you couldn't even get to it because of the way that they had protected themselves and designed this massive city. And the city itself occupied approximately 1 square mile of land. So for them to circle around the city probably took a couple hours, I would say. Yep. So when they were done, they went back to their camp and they rested. Okay. So let's go on with our scripture. So now we get to the 7th day. So they've been doing this for 6 days, and on the 7th day they rose early at the dawn of day and marched around the city in the same manner, not once, but 7 times. So imagine the captain of the army going, something's up. They're doing something a little different. They might have been laughing at him the first couple of days thinking, what can they do? What do they think they're doing, marching around the city? We're not scared. But then on the 7th day, they did something a little differently. They kept marching around the city 7 times. And it was only on that day that they marched around the city 7 times. And at the 7th time, when the priests had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city. And the city and all that was within it shall be devoted to the Lord for destruction. Only Rahab, the prostitute, and all who are with her in her house shall live, because she hid the messengers whom we sent." Remember if you remember the story, they sent out spies ahead to find out what was going on in the city. And she hid the spies and said, when this all comes about, she made a deal with them: protect me, keep me alive and my family. And but you keep yourselves from, and so because she hid the messengers whom we sent. Then it goes on to say, but you keep yourselves from the things devoted to destruction. So don't go in there and start accumulating all the spoils for yourself. All right? This is what they're being told. Lest when you have devoted them to take any of the devoted things and make the camp of Israel a thing for destruction and bring trouble upon it. If you take stuff that you're not supposed to take, you're going to bring trouble into the camp of the Israelites. However, but all the silver and gold and every vessel of bronze and iron are holy to the Lord. They shall go into the treasury of the Lord. So the people shouted, the trumpets were blown. As soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted a great shout, and the wall fell flat. So that the people went up into the city, so there's no longer a big barrier. They can just walk right in there, walk over the stones, and enter into the city. Every man straight before him, so every person there had a responsibility to take care of what was right in front of them. And then they captured the city. Then they devoted all in the city to destruction, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkeys with the edge of the sword. Sounds really harsh, doesn't it? But to the 2 men who had spied out the land, Joshua said, "Go into the prostitute's house and bring out from there the woman and all who belong to her, as you swore to her." So the young men who had been spies went in and brought out Rahab and her father and mother and brothers and all who belonged to her. And they brought all her relatives and put them outside the camp of Israel. And they burned the city with fire and everything in it. Only the silver and gold and the vessels of bronze and iron they put into the treasury of the house, into the house of the Lord. But Rahab the prostitute and her father's household and all who belonged to her, Joshua saved alive. And she has lived in Israel to this day, because she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. So I really wasn't going to talk to about Rahab too much, but I think that we need to say, being a prostitute isn't really one of those occupations that is a righteous one. All right? So, but here, her heart was in the right place, and she hid those spies so they would not be found out or killed. And because her heart was in the right place, her entire household was spared. All right? Because we talked a little bit about our hearts and our motives during our youngsters chat, or pastor's challenge. And so that just kind of came to me as we were going through there. But I want to talk about a couple of things. So the first thing that I want to mention is each of us has a promised land. And by that I mean God has something good for you. And perhaps all you see is the obstacle. All you see right now is Jericho, and it seems insurmountable. There is no way you are going to overcome this obstacle. I'm sure that the Israelites thought, yeah, we got swords, but we're no soldiers. We weren't trained, to be a soldier. Thinking, how in the world are they going to take this city? God arranged it. He arranged the battle plan in a way that they would have never thought, for them to overtake the city without any of the Israelites being killed. Okay? And he has a battle plan for you that he wants to share with you, and he wants you to follow the instructions. Every one of us have a purpose, and God has a purpose for each one of us to not only do in the kingdom, but he has blessings that he wants to give to you. The promised land was a blessing that he was giving to the Israelites, and he has one for you. Whether you are 10 years old, whether you are 100 years old, as long as you are living and breathing, breathe in, breathe out with me, God has a purpose for you. And he wants to give you blessings in the promised land. So know that. And then there was a time in the beginning when they were looking at the obstacle and thinking, there is just no way, I don't know how this is going to happen. We're not going to be able to do this. Joshua had to remind them of what they had just come through. The Lord had taken them out of Egypt, and they had been in the desert for 40 years. Did anybody starve to death? Did anybody die of thirst? No. And he went through all of the things that the Lord had done for them and where he had brought them to. And you all need to be reminded of what the Lord has done for you. Sometimes that gives us the faith and the strength that we need to move forward. Life's hard. Some days we are so weary and so over it all that we don't think we're going to be able to make one more hour, let alone a whole day or a week. The Lord knows that. Take a moment and reflect on what he has brought you through. A good way to do that is journaling. I am not successful at journaling. I keep trying and I keep failing, but I'm not giving up. To record your prayers and the date and what you're praying for, and then you can record, the Lord answered this prayer. The Lord spoke to me. I heard the Lord today. You can record that in a journal, and it will strengthen your faith. And even if you don't journal, like a whole diary kind of thing, use your devotion. This I can do. I can jot down a little word or two in my devotion or a sentence or two, and then I can go flip back and say, oh yeah, I remember that. I didn't think I was going to make it through that class. I didn't think I was going to be able to write that paper or make those footnotes. But the Lord made it happen. So next time I have to take a class, I can look back and say, God's going to get me through this. Sometimes we need that. We need to be reminded. And then the final thing that I want to share with you in our time together this morning is that, did you notice the people were to be reverent and in awe and quiet when they were walking around? When the trumpets were blowing, the people were to be quiet. They weren't to be talking among themselves. And sometimes I think, folks, that we yip, 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 yip to each other, and we complain, and we're grumpy, and we're grouchy when we have this big obstacle in front of us and we can't get through it, and I'm tired and I'm weary. we get negative. All right? So this is a good reminder to us to stop talking. Stop with the negativity. Now, there are occasions when we need each other to support each other and to be praying for each other, and we need to share our concerns and our problems. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but what I'm saying is sometimes we have to trust that the Lord has it under control, and we got to do what He has told us to do, and we need to be reverent and silent and not talk to ourselves with all that negativity, or talk to our loved ones, or talk about this. What do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? You should be only concerned about what the Lord has told you need to be doing. Okay? All right. And Joshua was faithful because he kept the word close. He meditated on it day or night, and that strengthened his faith, and he was able to lead these people in the face of, sure, we're going to lose this one, to victory. So I want you to take hold of what God has for you. I want you to receive the blessing that God has for you. So stay in tune with the Holy Spirit, stay in the Word, and be willing to hear the battle plan and follow the instructions.